Senate will come to order. Our first item of business is a land acknowledgement. ASG acknowledges with respect the land we are on today as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Kumeyaay Nation. We recognize indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all of the relatives within it. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to the traditional homeland are renewed and reaffirmed. Our next item of business is roll call. The clerk of the Senate will now take roll.
Aya Almani.
Here.
Ashika Arasu.
Here.
Anissa Beckett.
Here.
Jolie Beagle.
Here.
Chloe Cohen.
Here.
Danielle DePinto.
Here.
Devin Eder.
Here.
Dana Farhood.
Here.
Joshua Feingold.
Here.
Cece Fletcher.
Here.
Chloe Holm.
Here.
Anna Jardomov.
Here.
Gunnar Collin.
Here.
Arissa Lelavere.
Here.
Briera Long.
Here.
Mia Meradiaga Yegan.
Here.
Jonathan Martinez.
Here.
Malia McKinley.
Here.
Sean Paula.
Here.
Morgan Pang. Valeria Rivera.
Here.
Isabella Sevilla.
Here.
Alyssa Weaver.
Thank you to the clerk. Our next item of business is the approval of the agenda. Senator Valeria.
I move to table the presentation and discussion with Vice President Charlotte Johnson and Dean Nicole Whitner.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to table the presentation discussion with BPSA Charlotte Johnson and Dean Nicole Whitner. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. The line item is tabled for a later date. Any motions for the agenda? Senator Anna?
I move to approve the agenda for December 8th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, having been seconded to approve the agenda for December 8th, 2022. Is there any further discussion? If no further discussion, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. The agenda for December 8th, 2022 is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from December 1st, 2022. The IDEA Committee Chair.
I move to approve the minutes of the 1st of December 2022.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to approve the minutes from December 1st, 2022. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. The minutes from December 1st, 2022 are approved. Our next item of business is raising of questions from members of the public. At this time, any member of the public may voice any immediate concerns to the Assembly to be later addressed at the final hearing of business of the public. Jen?
Hi everyone, good to see you all today. Wanted to do a quick introduction. I would have waited till the end, but due to time, wanted to do a big introduction to our new director of the Black Student Resource Commons, Jay Rice, who's here today, and the speaker allowed that he say a few words.
representative for the Blackstone Resource Commons. Just very excited to be here with each of you. Looking forward to the opportunities to work with you. I hope that you each know where the BSRC is. However, in the event that you don't, 4th floor, 410, you see, come see us. Past that, we are also having a meet and greet. We're meeting now, but if you want to do the greet thing, it'll be tomorrow from 9 to 11, and there will also be opportunities to sign up for one-to-one meetings in the case that you have something that you'd like to discuss, whether it be ideas that you have, wanting to discuss past partnerships that may have existed, that I'm just not aware of. Please just feel free to stop by, and again, I look forward to working with each of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from members of the public? If not, we will now move to our next agenda item. So, in interest of time and how busy this Senate was going to be, we moved all of you should have seen the email, but just as a reminder, we moved the updates to the end of the Senate, just so we can get through a lot of the things that we needed to do at the beginning. Also, just a quick note before Mike comes here, like both the Vice President, who's not here today, and I have been working a lot with Mike Dills, and we're reaching a lot of actual really good headway. I really encourage a lot of open discussion and strong questions for Mike, but I also just ask that all of you think about how you phrase your questions in a way that is both respectful and kind. Mike is probably one of the nicest administrators that I know, so I don't want to hinder that work that we're working with and him kind of changing tracks and not being on it, because I really do see a really positive way moving forward. However, that being said, this is the time for you to all ask questions, but just keep that in mind. In interest of that, we are now moving to new business, and our first item of new business is confirmation and swearing in of the newly appointed senators. So, over just a quick overview, I met with several applicants over this past week, and we conducted interviews, and I am very excited and was very happy with all the interviews, so I moved ahead to appoint these 4 applicants, but it falls to you to confirm their appointments. The Academics Committee Chair.
I move to approve the newly appointed senators.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to approve the confirmation of the newly appointed senators. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes. The new senators are confirmed. Next, we are going to be doing, now that they are confirmed, we will be now swearing in. So I would like to call up the new confirmed senators to the front of the room to be sworn in. Does he swear? Okay, good. All right, so thank you to you all for being up here. I'm going to read a quick statement before we start the actual oath. The members of the Associate Student Government of the University of San Diego shall adhere to the highest ethical standards. They shall exercise judgments which are fair, consistent, and equitable. They shall do everything they can to strive for excellence in their goal, adhere to the Constitution and bylaws of the Associated Student Government, and work to achieve the mission of the University of San Diego. So now I will be reading statements, after which you will repeat, I will. Will you demonstrate loyalty to the mission and goals of the University of San Diego? I will. Will you act within the Associated Student Government's Constitution and bylaws? I will. Will you be fair and just in the treatment of all, addressing issues and people without prejudice, and maintaining a positive working and learning environment? I will. Will you honor agreements and preserve confidentiality? I will. Will you be honest in and accountable for your actions and statements? I will. Will you demonstrate personal and professional integrity in all matters and respect ASG leaders, administrators, faculty, staff, and students? I will. Will you provide leadership in all of your assigned duties? I will. Thank you. Now we will move on to the actual oath. So I will read a statement, and all of you will just repeat it after me. We will be part of a team which seeks to meet student needs.
We will be part of a team which seeks to meet student needs.
To extend opportunities to all students.
To extend opportunities to all students.
And to enhance the quality of education.
And to enhance the quality of education.
Students are offered at USD.
Students are offered at USD.
We will work with fellow members.
We will work with fellow members.
Of the Associated Student Government.
Of the Associated Student Government.
In a spirit of harmony and cooperation.
In a spirit of harmony and cooperation.
To the best of our ability.
To the best of our ability.
We will represent and serve.
We will represent and serve.
The Associated Student Government Body of the University of San Diego.
The Associated Student Government Body of the University of San Diego.
In all aspects of campus life.
In all aspects of campus life.
Thank you. Congratulations and welcome to the team. Can we get another round of applause for the new senators? So with that, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the presentation and approval vote for the quarter 2 reports and spring 2023 budget allocations presented by the finance chair.
All right. Sorry, I think the mic did not work with me. Alright, so we're gonna take this quick, I know we have a busy schedule, but I'm gonna provide a little summary of kind of what y'all's role is, because I know we have some new senators. So essentially, what we're doing is we're gonna be going over quarter 2 expenditures, so basically what was spent in the last couple of months for everything that we fund on campus, and we'll also be going over what we allocated for spring 23. That was in on Jesse's email, like the files, so to give a very short overview and summary, and then if you have any questions, you can go through that. So first thing is Senate's role. So basically, you're going to should have reviewed ASG Finance Committee's recommendation. So what happens is we meet as a group for 8 hours, sometimes 9, and basically go over like allocations, review like what our procedures are, see if there's any issues with it, and then also review like what people have asked for and if we're going to give them money to spend that for this next semester. So y'all's role is basically to either approve or deny what the recommendation is. You can't make any modifications to them, so you can't say, I want to approve all of this, but I want to
to change, this to be a little more, a little less. It's just approve or deny. So these are the quarter two reports. So this includes basically everything that was spent or projected to be spent throughout the end of this semester. So you can see on the leftmost column what was allocated and then what was spent. One thing to note here is the sports clubs are allocated by year, so that's why they have the 40,000 is because you don't ask for money in the spring, you just get it money from fall throughout the year. So basically everything was approved for quarter two expenditures. However, we had except for a few things. These are warnings, which means that we did approve them, and then on the next slide we'll go over things that we did not approve. So y'all can read it on here, but basically we just had a couple issues about how much was spent per person for food, the use of single-use water bottles, which we want to really limit as much as possible per sustainability guidelines that were passed last year, and there was an expenditure of stickers, even though we only approved food. One thing at the last item you'll see is a quarter one follow-up. Initially, in quarter one for SWIFT, we had a sticker expenditure that the Finance Committee decided not to approve. They asked if could we review it and make it a warning, so I had a Finance Committee review it and we decided to make it a warning. The things that we did not approve, the BSRC or a Black Lady Black experience, we didn't fund past 500 because of the high cost per person and less people attended than what was allocated for. So basically they told us a certain number of people would be there and we ended up having less people but spent more money. And then for SHWIP, the mental health check-in, we didn't fund the tissue boxes because they only allocated money for dividers and food. And then this would be our spring 2023 allocation recommendation. I just broke it up by budget. On my actual spreadsheet, you'll notice that it's kind of broken up by like line item and civic event, but this is how much we decided to allocate to all the centers, to ASG Ops, and CC's Creative Zone. And then this is for ASG Tech, how much was allocated. Do you have any questions about what they saw or what was presented here?
Senator Chloe.
Hi, I don't know if you could answer this, maybe Jalissa can. I wanted to ask about Dr. Avery. So for the Students in Need Fund, I noticed that was like the biggest discrepancy between what was requested and what was allocated. I was wondering, like, since Dr. Avery is the one who runs the fund, if she has any input on it, if it's like sufficiently funded, if they need more money, and she, like, where they're at with the Students in Need Fund in terms of at this moment.
So, I'll preface this by saying that I don't have a voting role in the Finance Committee, I just oversee it. So when I say we or the Finance Committee, I'll just be like generally represented in my understanding of their decision. That being said, Andres and I did meet with Dr. Avery a couple of weeks ago, so before we had the meeting, and I kind of relate to the questions that you guys had asked the last quarter, and what she said basically is the way the Students in Need Fund works is that essentially during COVID, ASG allocated a large sum of money to kind of help with unexpected costs related to online learning. So we gave over 100,000, how much of the number is, to this. And Dr. Avery also had a private donor last year donate about 100,000 to this fund. And so kind of the gist of that meeting related to how much money there is that they do have enough to sustain like throughout this next semester and possibly more based off of past expenditures. I believe last semester, or this semester, she spent around 66,000. So it'll be able to kind of keep afloat, but that number of money that they have, the pot of money they have will be dwindling. And so what the Finance Committee decided to do was give some money to it because they value it, but because there's already money there, they didn't think it made sense to use funds now, but that we can look back in the future if they're running out of money and they need more support, then during that semester's allocations, we'll get more money.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, comments, or motions? The Student Life Committee Chair.
I move to approve the spring 2023 allocation recommendation.
There's a motion on the floor, has been seconded to approve the spring 2023 budget allocations. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. The budget for the spring 2023 is approved. And we still now have the quarter two budget reports that still need to be approved. Or if you have any more questions or concerns. The student org committee chair.
I move to approve the quarter two, budget allocations,
The reports.
budget reports.
There's a motion on the floor, has been seconded to approve the quarter two budget reports. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. The quarter two budget reports are approved. Thank you, Ashley. And due to time right now, I will move to take a 5-minute recess. Yeah, we will move to take a 5-minute recess. 5-minute recess.
Hey, it's Jonathan. Hey. How you doing, man? See it. What about I know what's on your
Welcome, what's your name again? Kyla, nice to meet you, I'm Jen. Did you know each other? Oh, nice, awesome, we're really excited to meet you. Yeah, sure. We're friends of Okay, I got Are you all first year students as well? How did you go? Where do you live?
I think actually, like that, I don't know. I just kind of like
Hey Josh, good to see you. I love that. I bought them.
your wife that.
If I could just
I literally thought about it.
I would just connect with that. But I just kind of like.
Like I have never been in a space with that. Yeah. We did.
No, I had to feel that's true. Like how many people were in there. How loud it was. Yeah.
How you doing?
Good.
Thank you for making it.
These are the amount of people that you That's so crazy.
Finally meet the man behind the face, yeah.
Nice to officially meet you in person. Yeah.
Prior to the logistics, it just doesn't
If I could go
The Senate will come to order. Before we move on to the presentation by Director Mike Dills, just in consultation with the finance chair, I just would like to ask you all, the budget reports and the spring allocations, those are confidential information until those are disseminated in the public version. So just make sure to keep those numbers to yourselves. That's kind of like the role as like senators. You all swore to keep confidentiality. Those are just one of the aspects. So just if you could please not share those spreadsheets up until when the finance chair can disseminate a more public version of those numbers. Thank you. And now we will move to a presentation. Sorry. Presentation and discussion with Director Mike Dills from Parking Services.
Hello, my name is Mike Dills. I use he, him pronouns. I am the director of, what's my title? Let's see, Director of University Mobility and Scheduling, and within that is oversight of parking services, tram services, and university event scheduling. For those of you that are familiar with EMS, it's kind of that world. So a little background on me. I know some of you from different committees and the Reappeals Committee. I have been on campus proudly serving USD for 12 years. 11 of those years were spent in student affairs. I have been in my current role there was a restructure, so now we're part of the Department of Public Safety since late last January. So thank you for having me here, I appreciate it. So what we're gonna do today is, I think sometimes I can come up and last time I was here I talked about the plan and the policies and the procedures. What I really feel is that you all have questions, and so we can certainly go through all of that. It's all available on our website, and so what I'd like to do, and what was provided to me, which is great, are some kind of themes or topics of discussion to go over. And so what I'll do is, there's 4 basic slides that kind of give an overview of what we can talk about, and then I'll open up to questions and we'll have a discussion. I guarantee you that I may not know the answers to all your questions. I will work. If I don't, I will let you know, and we'll get those answers for you. So does that work, Andres, as far as we go through and then we can call them questions? Okay. So one of the first topics was to talk about permit pricing and citations, specifically the increase in permit pricing and citations and how those fees are determined. Prior to the mobility plan, which officially started July 1 of 2022, and really got into gear more at the start of the fall of 2022, the permit pricing had remained largely the same for 20 years. And the increases were based on the increase in operating costs, and it was, I agree, it's a big increase. If you can imagine that increase is not happening for 20 years and costs increasing around it. Plus, these were decided before COVID. COVID, it is happening, and it was delayed even some more. This third phase of the implementation brought us to where we are with those costs. And then historical demand. So what we'll kind of get through in some of these slides is guessing, parking and determining how things are allocated is largely a guessing game based on previous use of parking areas. And so a lot of the reason why certain areas have a certain amount of permits and things are based on historical demand. And also some of the increases you see prior to proximity spaces, proximity lots I should say, were reserved spaces. Those often had wait lists that people were on for years. So there was some reason to think that there'd be a great demand for that. Citation amounts, they have not changed dramatically for some time, and in the mobility plan, they really didn't change at all. Citation amounts are in place, and this is a really important point, and something that we talk about on our parking committee. They're in place to encourage behavior change. There's not a revenue expectation for citations. The finance office was in our last committee meeting and noted that the permits and citation, those numbers go into the larger university operations budget, which includes parking services, tram services. The citations are a very small amount. We don't have a quota of trying to get citations or things like that. They're really to encourage behavior change. So if it's okay, we can open up questions to this piece and go from there.
Does anyone have any questions for the piece that was just shared? Senator Jacob? Oh, no, okay. Senator Devon.
So you mentioned that, parking services is facing like a deficit, and that's what's kind of driving this increase in prices. How much historically, and recently has that deficit been? And also on the permit versus citation, like pricing structure, is there a certain number of citations that the parking services group has to reach in order to generate a certain amount of revenue to cover costs, or is that just variable and there's no quota?
Sure. So for the parking services hasn't operated in a deficit necessarily. The costs have increased. So I'll take for example, parking services. This pretty much completely supports tram services. In other words, the trams that you see go around. Sometimes we're able to rent those, charter them out to departments, and they help out at athletic events. And so there's a minimal amount that we charge people to use those to cover, labor and gas from those events. But by and large, parking services covers everything that trams does. So if you can imagine, gas has gone up, and I want to take note, these prices were set, before the pandemic. So it's more of the increases before that, but then now, even since then, labor's gone up, gas has gone up, and supplies are short. I mean, when we have a tram down to repair, it can take weeks to get the part that's needed. And that's just, we're not unique. The whole world is dealing with that. And so I would say that parking services doesn't necessarily operate in a deficit. Their funds go to not just tram services and the parking, but it gets spread out among university operations as a whole, which includes facilities management, all those areas. Then the next question is, there are no quotas. So, in every budget, there is a budget line that I would say for citations, there's not an expectation. It's either, you just have to kind of guess, because you figure that into the budget. And some years, like you say, are higher, some are lower, but there isn't a quota. I mean, ideally, we would like to not give citations, and everyone just park, they buy their permit, they park where they need to park, and we do that. So yeah, there's nothing that ever tells our enforcement to say, need you to get 10 citations today. That doesn't exist.
Next on SAC is Senator Jolie.
Hi. Thank you for coming, by the way. So I was just wondering about the breakdown of prices. We have like the list right here, and I was just wondering like how I think there's only the not actively charging is the only $25 one, and then after that they substantially increased from 50 to 100 to 200 and so on.
We've looked. This came up on our parking committee as well, and we've looked into kind of the history of the citations. Even the people that have been in parking for some time, a lot of these have remained, and there's not a date that they can pinpoint and say, they were decided on this date for this reason. A lot of the citations are put into place to, based on, what are other local institutions doing, what is the city doing. We're unique because we're private, and so there are vehicle codes and regulations that the state schools have to follow, that we don't have to follow. There's also things that the state schools can do that we're not allowed to do. So for example, we're not allowed to boot vehicles or put any kind of hindrance of mobility on a person's vehicle. And so the citation, this is just an example, the citation may be a certain amount at San Diego State, but they're able to boot, and what it doesn't show is how much it costs to remove the boot, all those things that are separate costs. And so some of the citations have built-in prices because the only recourse we have are towing, and we really don't like to tow. It's a terrible experience for the person, and it does take a lot of labor on our end, and it's just a kind of a messy thing. And so we try to only tow those that, if it's a car that we can identify, that they don't have a permit, they receive 5 or more citations, they get a warning on their windshield, and then we tow them. But that's kind of our main recourse. And so some of the citations have built in, again, it's trying to change behavior, where perhaps if there was more than 5 citations and we could just boot the vehicle and get compliance that way, that would figure into those citation amounts as well. That being said, the citation, nothing is written in stone. And so, we are actively working with the committee to look at some of the different citations and kind of move forward to where there's an understanding of where they come from and why. And we're kind of starting that, moving forward into the future. So I don't know if it's not a specific answer, because the specific answer is not readily available because it goes back a long time. But I guess it's important to know that they're not written in stone, and there's truly for behavioral change. So, for example, let's say a ticket is $75, is 60 more reasonable? That would still help behavior change, or I'm just being extreme, you lower it to 5 and then people say, oh, I don't care, I'm just gonna park. And so it's that balance of trying to figure out what's that spot. The feedback we receive with some of our tickets, it could be a person that's 3 days of wages. And so those are things we have to consider, what's the right spot for that?
Senator Joshua.
Thank you. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Okay, so one thing we haven't mentioned is the doubling of fines after 2 weeks. This has been proven to affect low-income students disproportionately. There are no payment plans for options to pay, which can lead to an overwhelming amount of financial pressure at once. If a student doesn't have $200 at hand, for example, and they're waiting on the next paycheck, doesn't come in for another 2 weeks, or they have other bills to pay, they have to pay $400 out of pocket. And there's not a 25 per week plan, there's not a monthly plan, it's all at once, and that's really difficult for many students on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Payment plans are offered at many institutions, so it's not something that is not done. There's precedence for it. Parking Services used to do a payment plan on a limited basis. The reality is that to do it internally, one, we don't have the resources to be a collection agency and to have permit plans. The other is that's more of a function of campus is by student accounts. So all that being said, we do work with vendors that could perhaps that offer that service of payment plans, and so it is something that we're looking into. We just have to be realistic internally that to do it well, we can't support it inside. So we are currently looking at our parking permit vendor who offers that service and see if they can help us with that. Because student accounts, I mean, they're looking at accounts for, you know, for tuition to everything, and parking is a small piece of that. And so that may not be the right place for them to manage a payment plan specific for parking. But you're right, it is a lot, you know, and again, the doubling is put there to encourage behavior change and to get you to pay it and not go that far. So, you know, we've looked at, you know, if you look at other schools that are state schools, the DMV requires 21 days before fines are added, or they put liens on vehicles and things like that. So, you know, again, that's not set, the date that we do it is not set in stone. It's something we're looking at right now with the Mobility and Parking Committee. But it goes back to what will it take to get someone to follow the procedures? And so the doubling is trying to get people to avoid it. And, you know, we hear it daily. I just didn't see it, I didn't know this would happen, but it does, and the moment that 14 days happens, it goes right to the student account. So we don't even see it after that point. I guess what I can say is I hear that, I hear what you're saying, and we are looking into that.
Just to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Point of order, or can I go chair? And also, I think that if you think, Mike, if you want to keep on going to, because I think you still have more slides to go through. So maybe, like, everyone who's on stack right now, we'll continue to have you on stack. But let's just get through the slides and we can just kind of.
Sure, that's a good point, because this is a popular one.
Yeah. So
okay. So the next one, and maybe should we go through all three and then let's do that? Okay. So the next was how are permit sales allocated? And so currently, you can see how the sales are allocated. And what you'll notice is the actual number of spaces on campus is far less than these numbers. It sits at about 5,023 spaces on campus. And so allocating permits is largely a guessing game. And every every institution will say the same thing, trying to guess how people are going to use permits. Because these are the permits we have to sell. I mean, a lot of these are sold. This is just the total of each area at this time. And year to year, semester to semester, we make adjustments based on demand. And so the other question was, how are the zones determined on the map? for this particular mobility plan, the zones were determined in the mobility committee. There was a committee that was formed in 2017 and had faculty, staff, and students and administrators on it to make some of these decisions. And just as a reference, that map went through 55 revisions to get to the one that exists today at number 56. And we're still ready to make changes based on what we've seen this semester, what we're going to see in the spring. You know, we see the same things you do. You can look at the lot, it's empty, all right? The demand to purchase the lot, certainly that was affected by the trailers being there a little longer, but our goal is to utilize the spaces we have. Before the mobility plan, for those that remember, there felt like there were no spaces on the main campus. After the mobility plan, now it feels like there's too many. We didn't add any spaces. It's just a difference of moving people around and utilizing different areas. So that's something, that's how those were formed. We can come back to that. The third one is questions about the citation process. So just to run through that quickly, basically you see the little Prius with the cameras on top driving around. It's doing two things. One, sometimes it's just counting vehicles, it's not giving citations. There's an app on the MyUSD, or there's a portion of the MyUSD app that shows, as close as we can, how many spaces are available in certain lots. We need to expand that. Currently we don't have counts for commuter lots, and so we have 2 cars, and it takes time once they scan the west, and they come over and they scan the main, and then they try and hit the lots in the middle, and it's just a constant, back and forth. We have been approved to get stationary cameras that just sit and they just count, and so that will relieve some of that, and maybe get you real-time counts as opposed to every hour, which we all know, once you get a count at 2 o'clock, at 2:15, that counts different. So, so there's some updates there. So the LPR, when it does give citations, the system inside is cross-referencing with the permit sales and making decisions on, are people parked in the right place based on their permit. If there's a hit, someone shows a violation, that citation gets sent to the office. There's people in the office looking at them, making sure that they're accurate to the best of their ability. If they're not accurate, they get voided. And then, as we were talking earlier, student, staff, any people in violation have 14 days to pay or appeal. If you appeal, it starts the clock again. So let's say you appeal, it starts the 14 days again. If you reappeal, then you do have to pay the citation up front, but then it kind of holds until the reappeal committee meets with you. And that's done through ASG Judicial Court. And then the final question, or theme, was to, what communication efforts have we been doing to kind of get this information out? So one of the biggest ones, and one that I'm very excited about, is kind of a reimagining of the Mobility and Parking Committee that was put in place to develop the mobility plan. This committee includes members of undergraduate representation, graduate student, law student, faculty, administration are all on this committee, and we are in place to kind of, how do we move forward? Because parking can constantly evolve, and it shouldn't remain static for 20 years, okay? So how do we make it work best for the campus? The campus is always changing. Major changes after COVID. We're part of it. Before COVID, there wasn't remote hybrid work. There's remote and hybrid work now. How do we capture those individuals to a point where they don't? A lot of them say, well, I have to pay for an annual permit or a semester permit. I'm here 3 days a week. And so we look at local institutions. UCSD is a program for remote and hybrid workers. And how do we accommodate better those that are coming to evening classes and different things like that. So those are things we're looking forward to discussing. Renewing connections with associate student government. graduate student government and the Student Bar Association. I really, enjoy the feedback that we've received, and it should be, as much as we can, a shared input. Certainly there are things that have to be a certain way, but we should at least have the discussion. We've started to use Touro Weekly and USD social media postings more. And just recently, in this last permit sale, we were using another system for emails, and Salesforce has been here for a while, but we're now using Salesforce, and so that was a lot better for our direct email list this time. We can see, who's opening it, who's not. Do we need to reach out more to those people? I'm just going to use an example. Why didn't second years open it, but graduate students did? So it helps to see those things. Okay, those are my 4 slides. So now let's go back.
Thank you. The sustainability coordinator is next on staff.
Hi, thank you. So you kept going back to, specifically for the citation amounts, like that you're kind of experimenting with, or they're kind of dependent on what kind of gets behavior to change. And I was wondering, I'm sure you do, but I was wondering just if the parking committee or the mobility committee, or you have any data on, or are collecting data on on behavior changes, or like how prices and citation amounts are influencing that?
So the data that we collect, it's a bit challenging to get demographics because it strictly looks at vehicles. And to your point, if they don't mind me sharing, we just had a discussion yesterday of how can we better survey the students at large and kind of get to that point of what we're looking at, and so to answer your question, no, we don't currently have specific data on that, and we're looking forward to working closely with some members on your team to figure out how can we do that, because we do not do enough surveying. I haven't seen any. I know that they've been done, but I haven't seen any recently, and so we need to do a better job on getting the pulse and the feeling, as opposed to we get a lot of feedback, but I'd rather get the feedback before the citation than after, and we typically get after. So.
Thank you.
Senator Valeria is next on staff.
Hello. I know you mentioned in your presentation how citations are basically used to change behavior. I am part of one of those. I parked wrongly once, should never do it again. But I wanted to ask, as a resident here, it is difficult to go back and forth, especially with living so outskirts in the vistas and coming late to, I don't know, parking super early and wanting to be at the library all day, and it is frustrating. Is there any way or any plans that you guys have as to expand residents' opportunity to park in commuter parking spaces? I know that obviously they should have a priority. They don't have a place to be at. When being at school, they should have a place where their cars can be at. But do you guys have any planning on expanding parking around campus, construction-wise, or even just making some commuter spots even a part of residents that they can be used?
So it's a good question, and it's one we're looking at currently, as potentially as early as next spring. So there's no construction being planned, and just a little bit on the reason, I'll just take canals for example, right? Originally there was going to be a garage underneath, but I forget the price. It's $60,000 per space or something like that. So there's no garage under there. There was potentially going to be spaces under the new tennis area, Hogan Tennis. Same thing. And parking and storage are typically the first 2 things to go in construction. To your point, there are plans potentially further down, and unfortunately I don't know if anyone here will, unless after you graduate, you get a job here, we'll see them. But there are thoughts about other areas, once the wellness center is built, you know, how does that change areas by the sports center and things like that, but that's not immediate. So, you know, one of the things we're looking at is how do we utilize specifically the park up option after 4 p.m. It's pretty restrictive right now. Before the mobility plan, it was less restrictive. Going into the mobility plan, everyone wanted to be real conservative to make sure that the people that bought permits were able to park. We've seen the data. That's the one complaint we don't have is I can find parking typically in the area that I need, where before that wasn't the case, because there's space. So we're looking at and we're talking with the Mobility and Parking Committee of how can we integrate the residents more into some of those plans, because the residents have never been part of those park up options. And it's a couple things that are happening there. For those that live in Manchester or Vistas, you know, you can't park up until 7 p.m. So if you're on campus late, it's dark early, you have to rely on trams that, you know, at night we have less. Maybe they come every 15, 20 minutes, maybe more. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. And public safety can't always do all the escorts that they're being called to do. And so we need to look at that aspect of it too, is how can we make it so that if you have a car and you're parked in Manchester, after 4 you can come, you can eat, you can study, and then you can drive back. And so those are things that are being talked about. The reason that one's being talked about now is because it doesn't require signage, striping, it doesn't require more lots, it's a policy change and it's communication and stuff on our back end. So it doesn't require any resources except for communication to make that happen. So that's something that's being looked at.
Senator Chloe, you're next on slide.
Hi, I know you mentioned that the permit prices remain static for 20 years. Is there like a threshold, or like when can you reevaluate permit pricing? Can you readjust it at any time, or does a certain number of years have to pass before you can change them?
I mean, there's no required amount of time. So I think a lot of it, probably on an annual basis, we would look at it. Even though the fall and the spring seem similar, it's unique, or not unique, it's just interesting in parking. I'll take the Valley area. Let's go last year. So I worked in housing in the fall, and it was busy, but there were, you know, some spaces. Then I moved to parking in the spring, and suddenly all that area was oversold. And because people go back home or things change and people bring more vehicles. And so it really takes us a full year to kind of look at some of those things and determine, you know, a lot of it is, again, it is based on budget, but it's also based on demand. And if we're finding that, hey, we used to have wait lists in a certain area, but for whatever reason, whether it's remote work or there's lower cost options or different things, we don't have wait lists anymore, and in fact, we have more spaces there. That's when we look at, okay, do we need to price things differently? And again, those will all be vetted through the Mobility and Parking Committee as well. And so I would say on an annual basis, probably look at it.
Thank you.
Point of order, the allotted time has expired.
The Idea Committee Chair.
I move to extend the allotted time by 15 minutes.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to extend the allotted time for 15 minutes. We will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Motion passes. 15 more minutes. Senator Ashika, you're next on staff.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming to the Senate, Mr. Dills. And my question is, so there are commuter students with disabilities who have to park in the West, and it's very difficult. And as you mentioned, it's not accessible. And as you mentioned, the tram system, the wait is very long and tedious, and it's also not very accessible for people with disabilities. So I was wondering, my constituents and I are wondering if there's been any conversations with regards to this and like the actionable steps as well.
So just to clarify, are these students that have placards or they don't?
They do, but they are assigned at the west parking lot, and some who also don't. So there's both.
Okay, so two things there. If they have a placard, they can park in any, it doesn't matter what permit you have, you can park in any ADA space on campus. If with a placard, if those spaces are full, you can park in any white line space on campus, and the loading zone. So I'd encourage them to reach out and we can, review those policies with them. And then, the second part, each tram is equipped with a wheelchair lift and ability support. And so I think the best thing, some of it is kind of a case by case. So I'd love to discuss that further and find out what are all the issues, because the areas, and this is just policy, but the areas are ADA accessible and those types of things. That doesn't mean it always is helpful. I think the best thing would be to talk about what are the issues that are experienced down there. One of the things, and this is kind of a side note with trams, we have had an app in place. It hasn't worked perfectly or even close for some time. So we were approved and have ordered, so in the next, now it's about 85 to 35 days, 25 days, new equipment, a new vendor, a new app, and so some of that might be helped where you can see where they're coming and feel good that they're going to come at that time, because just in general, I know time feels like it lasts a lot longer when you're just waiting for that tram to come around the corner, and so every second feels like a minute, because you think, should I find another way or should I wait? Oh, they'll be right here, and then you end up waiting 15 minutes, and the 15 minutes feels like 30. It's not a good experience, and so this app, or the new app, I'm confident will do that. So some of those things will help. That doesn't always help, a person who has ability difference that, and so we'd like to work with them. Parking Services does offer temporary ADA placards, I think, for 14 days. So there are things we can do to assist and go from there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The athletics coordinators next on staff.
I have a question about people, I guess, visiting campus who are not, like, their license plate's not registered with the campus at all. So if these cars, like, going through, scanning the license plate, going through the system, ticketing, but this license plate isn't registered at all, what is the process for that? And then if they are given a ticket, is there any way to really check if that's ever paid? Just because, you don't actually know who that is, how you get in touch with them, anything like that.
So to answer your question, the process is that if it goes by and scan comes up and there's no name attached, they get a physical citation on the windshield as opposed to an e-citation. Because we are private, we do not have access to DMV records. And some states allow that, but California does not. So there's nothing that can be found about them. So the way it typically works is they get a citation. If they never come back and they never pay, that's it. They can't do anything about that. If they come back, they'll get another citation. And then our policy is after 5. You get towed. Now what's unfortunate is if it's a student or a faculty and they decide not to buy a permit, and now they've reached their 5 and they get towed. Once they get towed, we know who they are. And so now all the back citations, in addition to being towed, get placed for them. So, that's how it works for our private institution in California.
Senator Devon is next on staff.
I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into depth about how you will be handling parking for the new wellness center in that situation.
Sure. So, I know more about how we're doing during construction versus maybe what will happen as they get built. Those discussions, even just about how we're handling parking during construction, are actively happening right now. In fact, right after this, we have a meeting about that. I want to wait till some of those details get put out by facilities team, because it can always change. There's just the things that we're considering, I guess, is what I can speak on. There's going to be a large amount of construction staff that will fluctuate during the year of construction. And so we're working on how do we best accommodate where they can be. There's going to be road closures and pedestrian paths that will be obstructed during different times. Certainly a lot of that is trying to get a lot of it done during the summer, but it's a really aggressive timeline. It starts in, I think, the beginning of this summer, and it's supposed to be ready after a year. The question about parking, it's right next to the main, and so, those are we have to look at that and see how is that gonna be different. But I don't have the exact answers at this time. Certainly more will come out soon, because they start doing construction, I think, really gets going largely after commencement. And so we'll see a lot of changes, and that's the heart of campus, working in housing. Before, Crossroads, that area, it's gonna have some impact, and it's gonna be a busy area.
Just bear with us. We have a lot of people on site, so just bear with me while I'm trying to figure out all the next people, but I think now is the student org committee chair.
I just had a question for you about the Immaculata parking lot. I really appreciate that it's been designated as a commuter lot, because we have a lot more parking on campus now, and I appreciate that. But sometimes it is reserved for events that are in the Immaculata, and sometimes students are unable to park there, and that's understandable. But it's not always known that will be reserved. That sometimes I'll go and I'll see it's reserved and I'll be late to class. And I know some of my constituents, it's the same thing. Is there a way to make it more well known when a lot will be reserved, so that people don't go looking for parking there and then end up late for class?
Sure. To answer your question, there are ways, and we need to find those ways, because one of the feedback some of the feedback we received is emails really aren't effective as much, and can we text, and so with some new programs that we're kind of getting into, there may be an opportunity similar to how public safety can send out a text alert. Is there a way? And again, I'm talking off the top of my head, but I know other schools do this to where, to the commuters, could we send a text to say, hey, this lot's offline? Because one thing unique and special about campus is we have a special relationship with the Immaculata. There's a covenant in place, and it's just basically an agreement that we have. That the lot that's immediate to west of the Immaculata is actually their lot. They allow us to share it because they don't utilize it. However, what we're finding is certainly during the pandemic, they didn't have as many events. Now that people are getting back out and having events, and they're getting busier, and it causes challenges. And so, working with that relationship and determining how best to use those lots, because when they have larger, and the ones that are during the week are the funerals. The weddings typically happen on the weekends or Friday night, so that doesn't impact so much. But it's the funerals. And just because of the way funerals are, they don't always know too far in advance of when they're going to have them. So we need to figure out a way Because I think that lot, most of the time, is a good spot for commuters, but we need to figure out a better way to communicate. But absolutely, we see that.
Next on stack is Senator Jonathan.
First of all, hello, thank you for being here. I know you mentioned already the Canas building and like there's like a potential for like an underground like parking lot, but like of course like that would be way too much. Has the new building like impacted like how was like what was the impact that the new building has had like on you guys? Has it like altered like any like parking like plans you guys have? Do you guys like have like any ideas? Like I know like, space could probably be like something in the way for you guys, but do you guys have any like plans or something you guys have in mind when it comes to parking with the new building or like anything closer to like Shadi and KBJ?
So you're right. The parking garage opportunity at Canas is gone. Okay, that's gone. And how did it impact? Before Canas was built, there was an Olin lot there that was, I believe, faculty staff. Maybe it was reserved. I don't remember. So if you look at the map, one of the things that's tough for faculty and staff, there are no faculty and staff lots on the west side of campus except for west parking. There's proximity over there. Not all of it is full, so we're looking at how do we better utilize some of those areas. The other way it's impacted is Canals has a lot of events, and so it's challenging during the day to balance. They have an event, let's say of 200 people, they can park in the west. Now, that impacts the west parking, it impacts the trams down there, so we've gone to encouraging them to get their own charters and to get the people up. For those of you who remember, I remember west parking was not busy at all for years. Now it's stopping over there. I mean, it's busy, and the trams are busy over there all the time, and so there's also a shift in having to remind the people on the west side of campus that are booking events, you can't guarantee that there's going to be space in the west because those spaces are purchased by the community. And so I think that there's still a learning curve going on of how do we best accommodate events. There aren't a lot of visitor spaces on that side of campus either, except for at the west. So that's how it's impacted. And then to answer your question about future construction, we're always advocating for parking. And so, as much as we can do to advocate for it, and we'll continue to do that. Most likely, though, if anything new is built, parking will be, I would imagine, more on the perimeter. We continue to that would be where we have space, but we're also kind of landlocked here. So it'll be interesting as the university, if they want to grow and things like that. How do we do that?
The president.
Hi, thank you. There we go. Hi, thank you so much for being here again. So I have two questions, and my first one is a clarifying question. Did you say that the money generated from citations goes towards operation costs?
It goes, so we're part of the Division of University Operations, and so it's part of that large budget.
And then my second question is, I heard that you Parking Services is looking towards getting a vendor to potentially collect, if a payment plan is supposed to be instituted, that could help collect those frequent payments. I was wondering if you believe that would impact the cost of parking permits or citations at all.
I don't know if that would impact that. We're still learning, I know there's costs involved in both to have this service. So we would want to see how does that work? Could it be forwarded on to, hey, once you go to collections, there's another $20 added? I don't know, but I know there are fees that USD would incur for going with those services, and so how do we do that?
Next on stack is the Chief of Staff.
thank you for being here. I just have a quick question about when, like, people with career fairs or stuff like that, where a lot of people from outside the USD community come and, like, do presentations or, like, a career fair, etc. I see, like, sometimes centers will try to, like, request money for their parking or something like that, but usually, obviously, it doesn't get covered. But is there a way to, like, maybe ask for their plates and then, like, you guys can have that in the system so they also don't get ticketed just in case they do come the next year or stuff like that, so it doesn't keep adding up to 5 and then end up with towing or stuff like that? Is there any way we can, maybe in Google form, how many plates do you need, etc.?
So that process exists with the permit plan, and so a department. So when you say center, you mean a campus department or something different?
Yeah, a campus department.
So campus departments are able to request codes, whether it's a 4-hour or an 8-hour code. Usually that, then they either they get a code, or sorry, they get a link and they can put the license plates in themselves. Sometimes there's almost too many different options, and so we're looking at that because it gets confusing on who can request, what can they request, this costs here and this costs there, and so we see that. So sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place because there's a lot of different ways to do it right now, and that's part of the problem, I think. So we have the Park Mobile app, which people can go on and put in plates and pay for it. Some departments, like you said, they don't want their guests to pay at all, and so there's a process they need to go through to put those plates in. They aren't always able to get the plates, and so it can be challenging sometimes. So I think to better answer your question, it's that we need to simplify that process. You know, just myself, I went to UCSD for a meeting. All they had there was the Park Mobile app on the sign, and that's my option. And so I think sometimes we're trying to respect how it was and to keep people happy that way, but you know, also trying to move forward with this other way, and we get caught in the middle. And so it might be that we just need to pull the Band-Aid off and say, this is how we're doing it. And because it was really easy for me. I understand it's not easy for everybody, you can on the smartphone, things like that, but that was my only option when I went there. And here we kind of get locked up in all of our options.
Thank you.
Point of order, the allotted time has expired.
I will also mention we do have several more people still on stack, including some people who want to speak again from the original questions, but it is up to you all to decide to extend time or to call it here. The student or committee chair.
Move to add 10 more minutes.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to add 10 more minutes to this allotted agenda item. We will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? All those, and abstentions. Okay, motion passes. 10 more minutes. Senator Josh, you are next on staff.
Hi. Hey. So, I've gotten tickets before. For sure. Gotten many tickets.
No judgment, it's okay.
And I've gotten 14 tickets.
That's a lot of tickets.
I currently have a $200 ticket that I didn't pay after 2 weeks, and I owe $400 to the school currently. But that's just me griping and being sad about my brokenness. But I was wondering, I've gotten tickets outside of this institution as well in California. And,
we should talk about how we can help with behavior.
And what I noticed though is that there are other options for behavior change besides like crippling the student body financially. And one of them is volunteering. So there are options. Instead of having to pay, you go out, you volunteer for a couple hours within an organization. You're picking up trash, you're helping at a soup kitchen, you're doing something, and then you don't have to pay an absurd amount of money, and you're also helping the community. And as a change maker campus, what better to do than help out the community and not pay $400 because you don't know how to park? So that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, we were just at a conference, and there was a whole session on does financial citations change behavior? And there's a lot of discussion and study on that. And there's certainly a school of thought, one side that says, look, people are choosing this is what they're doing, and there's another side that says, well, perhaps there are other ways. A school like USC, and this is just an example, they have found that warnings, most people look at a warning and they throw it away, say, okay, we got a warning. So they've done away with warnings, and they, the first, I guess you call it a citation, they get a quiz. And the quiz, you have to score 100%, it's open book, and you have to answer all the questions right that include policies and procedures of parking, and then they don't have to pay. So to your point, there are ways that we can do things. I think this is where a partnership with this body and the graduate student body, and we could hopefully work together. The resources to plan some of those things, we need help. And there aren't enough staff in our office to do both of those things. So we're open absolutely to things like that. And I had not heard that before, the volunteering. Is that with the city, that you can do that?
Yes.
Okay. So we absolutely, like I said, we're not looking, there's not a revenue expectation for citations. And so if there are better ways to do that, we want to look at those.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Next on stack is Senator Valeria.
Thank you. The suggestion before of adding the time to 4 p.m. would be a huge change. So that would be amazing. I think it would keep campus safer, and it would just allow students to have more opportunity to go and study at a desired place. Given to what Senator Josh said on suggestions, on a more positive note, I wanted to also suggest and add that maybe as seniority grows, maybe we could add a certain discount. It really sucked to have paid a lower permit price freshman year, coming back sophomore year. I have to pay a lot more. So should I just walk or should I bring my car? And I think that maybe adding a discount by seniority or raffling a free permit pass for a year could take a lot of people off your guys' backs. And again, I really just want to appreciate the tram. They're really helpful, especially I don't know 2 buses have been added. I've noticed that I don't really know if they have or not, but it's great. But yeah, I just wanted to suggest that and say that the 4 p.m. would be great. Thank you.
So I appreciate that suggestion. The currently kind of and it doesn't help the pricing per se, but we do offer permit sales in a tiered manner. So usually the first option goes to 4th year undergrad, law school, graduate student, and then it's that way. Again, that doesn't address the cost issue, but we do have some seniority in that way. But again, we listen to all suggestions, and some of that is budgetary and things, but I appreciate that. And the trams, it's been I think we've done well in some areas, and we're not doing well in some areas. And to your point, we had to bring in a couple charter buses to help support us, while we were low, you know. If anyone's out there trying to get a job, this seems like a good time, because no one's applying. So, you know, we're short, and we've been short. So unfortunately, there's these vendors that can help us out. And we'll keep trying to improve it, because I just know how it is out there. I see people waiting in the large groups, and it's tough. It can be tough.
Next on stack is Senator Mia. Keeping well.
I know you said earlier that the trams don't work out or less in the evening. I know with finals coming up and the library being open 24/7, would you be open to having the trams be open later? Like, I don't want to walk back, especially all the way to the Vistas at like 2 a.m. And I would just feel safer overall with the tram. Would that be something you guys would look into?
It's certainly something that we can look into. Realistically, I don't have our own drivers. I don't have drivers that can work that late, but it is a valid thing to look into, and perhaps, you know, I have to discuss that internally with public safety, and how do we better support that, because our current staff, we just don't have the people right now to do that. But I think that's something that we need to discuss more. But it hasn't been discussed, so thank you.
Next on stack is the clerk of the Senate.
I think a good thing, this is more of an adjustment statement to our senators, is I'm hearing a lot of ideas for resolutions that can come out of this discussion. I think specifically focusing on inciting behavior change, and I think we should be working on surveying our students. This is something the parking department has not done yet, so I think it's something that we can step in and possibly do in order to incite change. Pricing is obviously a main issue, and I think proving that, based off our one senator, I don't think the prices are inciting change. So maybe we can be finding new solutions.
Yeah, I also agree. I also think that I want you all to be thinking of ways that we can continue. Both Vice President, who's not here again, and I are working closely with Mike Dills to kind of create, you know, looking specifically at payment plans and some of those like different citations that don't necessarily make a lot of sense to maybe look at. But we're, you know, and it's really a great opportunity for us to also be on the committee hearing all these things. But valid point to the clerk, and also all your questions are very valid. I think next on staff is the student org committee chair.
So I just had a quick question about for when the wellness building is being built. I know that it's going to impact the main lot probably a lot more than we would want because it's so close and there's going to be construction and everything. Is there a way to get the lot that is designated as proximity where like the school of business was? Is there a way to get that designated as a commuter lot for the duration of the construction?
So, according to the construction team, it should not impact the actual structure. Nothing's gonna be blocked off as far as in and out. That can always change, so I think that's something that in the construction meetings that they're actively talking about is how to the impact on campus less, knowing that there will be impact. But certainly those are things that, again, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, that we will be looking at as those plans continue. Because if they feel that there won't be, or somehow it will impact that structure, or there won't be enough spaces in there, then we will need to look at something like that. At this time, though, that's not the plan. That's not the plan, but plans can change.
Point of order, the allotted time has expired.
In full transparency, I know it is kind of getting closer to 15, but also we do have the president and Senator Jonathan on staff. So. Senator Josh?
I move to add 5 minutes to the allotted time.
There's a motion on the floor, having been seconded to add 5 minutes to the allotted time for this agenda item. We will now move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion fails. No 5 minutes added. And I think that's it. Thank you, Director. With that, we will now move on to the next items on the agenda. We just really have updates. We're going to try to get through them as quick as possible. So if you have an update, just really summarize and go quickly. So next is report from the Speaker of the Senate. So just happy Senate to you all. We did Board of Trustees last Thursday. As you saw, I appointed 4 new senators to the Senate. We are now at the highest number of senators that we've had in a couple of years, so I'm very excited. Like we discussed earlier, I was discussing with the Vice President and Mike Dills about working with a direct partnership. So really what that meeting came out of is that we're hoping to actually help draft some of those proposals that Mike is going to disseminate with VP Kai Snyder. And so I'll be looking for, in the spring, for to set up probably an ad hoc committee with certain senators and the Vice President and I to kind of address parking as a specific attainable issue. Like I said, I think there's a lot of leeway to move forward, and Mike is very much open to having a lot of discussions about all these different things. And I think definitely a payment plan is in the sides, and other things are also in the sides. Last night I also met with Vice President Charlotte Johnson to discuss an observation that the President and I made at SACBA, just about some commitments that some people in that committee said that we were in partnership with, but we really weren't. So we're working with that, and so it was kind of like a weird situation that happened. Anyways, I just wanted to say you have made it. I wish you the best of luck in your finals. Thank you for pushing through for a whole semester. You all deserve the break. And I look forward to seeing all of you again in the spring. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Next is reports from the Senate VP.
You can read. Update your GCAL, please share it with us. Our first Senate will be January 26th, mandatory training on January 28th. Good luck, everybody.
Also, I know you guys don't want this as a holiday gift, but as a holiday gift to me over intercession, please review Robert's rules. Not calling anyone out specifically, but it would go a long way. And as already has been stated, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. You guys got this. Good luck with finals.
Next on the agenda is reports from the committee chairs and coordinators.
Okay, keep it very short. We have done 2 of our 3 grant review meetings. We have our last one tomorrow. We will be allocating all $30,000. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday.
Hi everyone. So now that the semester is over, all we did was set goals for next semester. Today is the Center of Inclusion and Diversity's finals we talked, but it's in Senate, so everyone's missing that. And then we have take pause from finals and join student wellness tomorrow. In front of UC, there'll be therapy dogs. And good luck on your finals and have a great winter break.
Hi everyone, so we went through all the suggestions from the student board comments and received a lot of feedback, and we have set goals for every member for next semester. I hope everyone has an amazing and safe break and does amazing on all their finals.
Thank you.
The grocery lift codes are currently at 170 uses. The last ride of the semester is this Sunday, December 11th. We have also submitted a new initiative request that was accepted. Thank you to Senator Gunner for doing that. Providing lift codes for travel assistance to the airport. The code is ASG Airport. Marketing will be out as soon as possible. Good luck on finals.
I met with the academics and within athletics about the academic resources for student athletes, and we have a meeting I plan on setting a meeting with academic week next semester. Also, I am meeting with Gabriella Rainbridge at either the end of this week or early next week for about next semester about a version of the scholastic assistant program for student athletes. And the 12 days of Christmas thing is still happening until Monday. There's men's basketball on Saturday at 7 p.m. and at JC.
Hope everyone has a great finals week. You should check out the BYUSD Instagram for all of the wellness resources available during finals week.
Everyone have a good finals and happy holidays to everyone who celebrates something, whatever you celebrate. And then here's some sustainable practices you can do during the holidays. You can try and cut down or reuse wrapping, avoid non-reusable decorations, and then try and eat locally and seasonally, stuff that's in season, and find eco-friendly gifts if you can. Thank you.
Next, on the agenda is reports from the ASG Executive Board.
All right, everyone. So the most important thing on my slide is the survey, the Wellness Classroom survey closes tomorrow. So please, please, please repost that picture on the ASG Instagram that has this, because it's looking like right now, like half of the respondents are all going to get $25 Visa gift cards. So please, please encourage your constituents to fill it out. And also, you should be filling it out as well. All of your input is valuable, but please tell your constituents to fill that out. Besides that, you can all read everything else on my slide, but good luck with finals and have a wonderful holiday and break. I'm also going to give Connor's updates. He is currently at Faculty Senate, and that's why he's not here today. Academic research grant meetings have begun, and most grants have been approved in full. And he wants to say thank you to the academic committee for all of your hard work. And looks like he has a fun fact there that y'all can read. And I'm also going to be giving Alana's updates. She had the last parking reappeals meeting of the semester, and they are working on finalizing their complaint form during the meeting on Friday. And assigned members are going to take leads on different parts of the Senate bylaw updates, and hopeful to have this done by the beginning of next semester. And any questions, that's her.
Hi everyone, biggest thing from me is our event with Jeanette McCurdy is tonight in Shiley Theater. If you don't already have a ticket, we will have a standby line and we'll be releasing seats at 6:50. And the first 80 people to come will get a signed copy of her book if you have the ticket. So just heads up. And then just good luck with finals and happy holidays. Thanks everyone.
Alright, so today's things are finance committee, thank you all for your hard work. Hopefully it's all done. Gonna be working on the ASGBC funding guide, bylaws, over break. And if you want food vendor that we don't have on campus approved, email me, I'll try to get it approved. Good luck on your finals, have a wonderful break.
Hi everyone, so classroom wellness survey, like President Melissa said, is closing tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. So make sure to repost it. The post on Instagram also has you tag 2 people, so tag 2 friends, why not? And then also lift codes to the airport next week. Code is ASG Airport. And also please make sure to attend the ASG holiday party organized by our lovely chief of staff, Amaya. We're going to be taking a group pic for our ASG holiday card. Thank you all for a really great semester. See you all next spring.
Not a lot from
me from last week. You guys can read that. Yeah, so see you Friday in your PJs or comfy clothes, whatever you want to wear. Yeah, look at those gifs. Good luck on finals. Quote of the day: you are capable of a lot more than you know.
That was the quickest update we've ever done. So with that, we move to our last agenda item, final business and hearing of the public. At this time, any senator may take from the table any motion previously laid on the table in the meeting the week before or present urgent business. Any member of the public may voice any concerns to the assembly on non-agenda items. Senator Cece.
I move to adjourn.
There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to adjourn today's meeting. Hey, I didn't call yet, wait. There's a motion on the floor, have been seconded to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes, that is adjourned. Happy holidays.